for an engineer of some sort. He said, it's only a foreman's job in the company. Dad said, I'll take it. And he went straight up our train there. They lent him the money, and he got the job. Of course, he'd been a manager of a big Scottish company in Antwerp, on the docks. He had a big firm to look after for years, so he had a good background anyway. And of course, then we did the Brave Act, with that broken ship. We saved the Temple Forging Engineering Company hundreds of pounds, and they said, what would you like, Harold? Would you like us to give you money for a house in Ilford? Or do you want to get a new car? So Dad said, thank you very, very much. Very kind of you to recognise what I did, but I'm going back to Belgium when the war's finished. He said, because it was on the point of finishing. Oh no, you're not. He said, yes, I am. He said, but in the meantime, if you don't mind, let me open a firm for you on the docks, on the London docks, he said. And I was very familiar with the docks with two walls. You see, he was day and night on the docks repairing ships, letting the boys get back out there to fight. And he was good with his work and he was fair. Women loved him because they used to say that they were assembling in his company. So they used to say, oh, he said, can we smoke while we're assembling? He said, ladies, you do what you like. He said, but get on with your work. Don't sit tattling all the time. Just get on with it. Talk if you want to. Smoke if you want to, but get on. So don't forget, your boys are fighting out there and they need this stuff. Well, that's why it was fair, you see. And then when they bombed the whole East End of London, it was always the East End they seemed to pick up. I don't know if it was trying to get central London or what. And people were very poor anyway up there, weren't they? And they used to say, after the alarm went, the all clear went, so now who's living at so-and-so up there? So I put the hand up to working girls, you see, women, mothers, of course, some of them. He said, right, he said, who lives there? So they said, right, you two get in the car and I'll take you around, make sure your properties and your kids are all right. So they appreciated that. That's why they did anything for him. They trusted him. And he had a good reputation, marvellous engineer, naval engineer he was, There was letters behind his name, and bless him, he got himself there on his own, because his parents didn't have any money at all, stuck in Belgium without any money. The British government couldn't pay them because they'd left the country too long, that's the law then. And Belgium weren't going to give them any money because they were foreigners. If you stay here, it's your lookout, isn't it? But it's fair. So they had no income. So Grandad used to do naval officer's uniform. He was a tailor. Because Grand used to do all the felling of the lapels and all that to help him. And of course, Dad was an only child because they lost the little girl, didn't she? She died. So Dad was out on the docks playing with the dock kids. Of course, he was well, schooled on people on the docks. He knew everything. He used to have a great game. The one that the boys used to get nearest the edge of the water. They won. He always won. He was in it. Grandma used to tell me that. She said, oh, your daddy was terrible. She said, times he came home soaking wet, as happy as Larry because he'd won. Typical. Then they sent him to a boarding school in Belgium. Remember, it was then a very Catholic country. And they were all monks, priests in there. And when they had a bath once a week, they had to get in there with a long vest, all the way from the neck down to their ankles. And they must not see their bodies. They have to lift their vest up and rub themselves clean with soap and everything, but mustn't look at your bare body. You might get ideas. What ideas, I wonder. Oh, terrible. There's a photo I saw him once with knickerbockers on. There was a uniform, like shorts but down to your knees, black, of course. Standing there looking as miserable as sin. He must have felt it as well. What the hell am I doing here? He didn't enjoy that at all. And then at 16, Grandma inherited money from her dad because she was rejected. She was out of wedlock. You can't have family living together if someone's out of wedlock. So poor baby's already stamped before it's born, isn't it? So of course she had to go. So she went to an old aunt who had a mill in the shop and she learned to make hats there and to stitch. But she was always happy. She was a lovely person. Used to talk to my niece Martha. She said the same. We tried to pattern on her, but we'd never make it because she was angelic. Never lost her temper. She just used to get serious. But she had a heart of gold, and every poor weak thing, whether it was a bird, a person, all come in, she'd look after them. You know, she's one of those marvellous person. When she was ill, you never knew it. She used to keep going. Fantastic courage. She had a breast removed. That's the only time she went into hospital. She came out after 3 days. I remember her in a dressing gown, a thick dressing gown, standing cooking with her arm in a sling. She had the breast off 2 days before. Never complained, nothing. You didn't know she had a cold, whether she had a flu, no. But after lunch, she didn't wash up or anything. She went and laid on the bed with her Woman's Weekly. And that was her little treat for her now. She'd lie there in bed, rest, either go to sleep and read her Woman's Weekly. And that was her little treat. So of course I was a good little girl. I used to take her a cup of tea. She used to say, "You come and wake me in case I'm asleep, Jessica." About 3 o'clock I used to go out with a cup of tea, bless her. Oh, she used to be so grateful. Grateful for little things, you know. A lovely person, absolutely. I couldn't have had any replacement of my mother better than that. It'd be impossible. My mother wouldn't have been like that. She was highly strong, very highly strong. I brought her to England in the First World War, and Grandma took her under her wing, of course, as she did every poor other lame bird. And then she took her out, and Louise was terrified of buses or anything like that, and the horses. She's scared of everything. Absolutely frightened like a child. And of course then they had the Zeppelins bombing as well then those days, didn't they? That's when she said to my dad, she said, "Harold, I'm terrified when you go to work." He said, "My dear, I have to go to the docks. People are fighting for this country. They want their ships back when they're damaged, and I've got to go." He said, "Look," he said, "you sit under that lavatory cistern." He said, "There's all that water in that cistern. If anything drops in the house, it goes straight into that cistern." Poor soul, she believed him. She sat there for hours on that toilet. Her bowels must have wondered what on earth's going on. Of course, she couldn't speak any English or anything. She must have had a lousy time. The people next door, because they had the first council house in East Ham, you know, my dad and mum. And people next door were Scottish. Of course, they spoke in a funny English way, I suppose, as well. And they could see that she was very lonely and all that. And they looked after her quite a lot. And they had a little girl called Jessie. So, of course, when the war was over and they were going back to Belgium, my mother was, she just had, my sister was born in London, you see. Oh, I had that rubbed in my face hundreds of times when she was in a bad mood. I was born in England, you were born in Belgium. Why this should be annoying, I don't know, but that's what she did. She found there was a weak spot. Anyway, and she was born here, and I was born over there, and there was always trouble, because when I was in Belgium, I was Belgian. But I used to say, "Well, my father's British." "Yes, but you're born over here, so you're really partly Belgian. Your mother was Belgian." "Yes, but don't try to convert me to be Belgian, because my father would kill me." I used to say that. 16, you had a choice. You had to go to the town hall, and you had to see the mayor. And a big occasion, that. And you're 16 years old, and your dad went with you. and he took you there, and Dad wasn't allowed to go in the room with the mayor and you see, so you were on your own with the mayor before you went. Don't you dare let him talk you to become a Belgian. No, Dad, you're sure now? Whatever he said, no, you want to remain British, because Father's British, see. As Dad said he could see another war coming, you see, and he knew we'd have to come to England. We would have been put in a camp, of course, if we hadn't come. They were dead against English, you know. I was telling Anne, I'll never forget one day when I was about 14, 15, Grandma said to me, because I remember I'd never had a mother really from 2 years old, she used to say, oh, we'll go to the cinema tonight for a treat, and I'll meet you after school, etc. We'll go to the cinema. So we went to the cinema. After the show, we were walking home through a side street to get back to their flat where we lived, and I heard footsteps behind me, but didn't take any notice. All of a sudden, they hit Grandma on her back, an old lady of nearly 80. She sent flying on the pavement face down. Of course, I'm trying to pick her up, and behind us were two lads, about 20, 22 possibly, fascists with black shirts and boots, speaking German, laughing their heads off. So you swine. I didn't tack any further, just went off laughing. I never forgot that. I wanted the job to get her up, and she never complained. Her knees were bleeding and everything. Terrible, isn't it? Which showed how wicked it all was, wasn't it? To do that to an old people, because they were speaking in English, you see, this is it. We had to go, and definitely I had 1 hour to leave the country. When Dad went to the consul with me, we were locked up in this room. It was all padded. Room. I've never been in anything like it in my life. It wasn't bigger than this room, it was square, and it was just, you know how you used to have old-fashioned quilts, is it like, you know, mattress in 4 blocks, and all the walls were padded with satin, a dark grey satin all across the room, the 4 walls.
Sounds like Christian Grey's room.
Yes, the secrecy of something, all locked, and a guard in uniform. And we were locked in there, and they let my father get in because they said she's young still. He said, we'll let you come in, but you have to be sworn in front of a commissioner for oath. We had to be sworn in to high secrecy, never to divulge what was happening. The man sat there, all medals he had and ribbons from the Admiralty. Sat there. Oh, was he officious? Mind you, it was extreme. There was just an hour before the destroyer left Antwerp. It was the last chance. And he said, before I start, he said, you're her father. He said, I'll allow you to be here because she's young. Who is she taking with her? She belongs to our staff. She's allowed to take family. But it's not a very big destroyer. I'll never forget the name of that destroyer as long as I live. It's HMS Brilliant. Anyway, so he said, who is she taking? So Dad said, we should take my mother. How old was she? She was about 77, 78 then. So he said, oh, it's an elderly person. Is that all? He said, yes, my father said, I've got to stay behind. I've got a daughter with a baby here, or I can't abandon her. She's a bad epileptic anyway. And we said, I'm sorry. He said, but it might be your last chance, you know, to get away. And he looked at the time, he said, she leaves the docks in 1 hour. And we had to rush with the car back to the flat. Poor old Gran, it was a Sunday. It was in May. Would be 1940, wouldn't it? Anyway, she was cooking Sunday dinner. She had roast potatoes, beef, you know, usual Sunday, English Sunday dinner. Everything was English cooking, of course. And he said, Mother, he said, don't panic. I want you to remain calm as you always are. Just switch off the gas. He said, all the dinner, he said, you'll be going to England now. He said, you've got to pick up, can't have your luggage, just what your clothes you're standing up in, and a coat, of course. And one night, or whatever you need, he said, in the little attaché case. And you can have 2 pieces of bread and butter in there as well, because you might be stuck for a long time getting to England. He said, now, start now. He said, you'll be ready in 10 minutes. 10 minutes to leave your life behind. Can you imagine it? Panic. Well, you don't panic, you don't have time. You don't have time, and we had to be ready. That's a brand new car we had from England, the Vauxhall. A lovely port wine with a white roof. Oh, it was gorgeous. He didn't have it very long. All unbroken glass, driving to this destroyer where it was built, and they were standing on the deck, the crews, only not a big destroyer either. The mess we were put in, the officers' mess wasn't bigger than this room, and about 30 people in there, can you imagine? 7.5 hours, we'd had nothing to eat or drink since breakfast, and we got to England at 7:30 at night. A long time. Very hungry, very thirsty, no money. Grandma across a plank to get to the quay, or you should go in a misstep and down in a drink. You know, no arm things, these are just a plank. What's a destroyer? Don't expect to take refugees, do you? All trotting across in one file, hoping nobody misses their step because we'll all go down in a drink. Where are we? Pitch dark. There wasn't any lights, you see, because of the invasion threat. No names of anybody, didn't even know where we landed. Where are we? Where are we? In the dark. Folkestone. It's Folkestone. Oh, Folkestone. Where are we going? To a hotel? Not a penny in my pocket, no, Grandma. Dad didn't have it. He went to the bank. All shuttered and down. Everybody had flown to America. Anybody with money got away. Because the Jews stayed behind. All destroyed, every one of them. My friends I was at school with, I don't think there was many survived, because a lot of Jewish girls, because it was Diamond Centre Antwerp, it always has been, and they were all Jews, of course. But mostly were Jews. As I remember walking near the station, there was a Jewish quarter there. Nice people, some of them were at my school. Well-to-do, out of diamonds and everything. But of course they had very strict religion, and it was a Saturday. I was walking by with a friend, I don't know where we're going too far back now, and the lady came out of the house with an envelope, a letter. Oh, she said, excuse me, troubling you, but can you open the letter for me, please? Only Saturday we're not allowed to open any correspondence. Saturday was their Sunday, wasn't it? You know, they went to the mosque and everything.
I forget the name of it, but yeah.
They were very strict, they were, on the religion then. I don't suppose it's like it now. So I had to stand and open the envelope for the woman in the street. You know, different life. I had a different life. How we had these holidays, and we enjoyed them. But no money, really. I mean, we just took the camp stove, you know, the stoves, and the old tin kettle. And a frying pan, of course, and things like that. And I'll never forget, where the carpets came from down south, that town. And there was this lovely wood, and I said to Stan, well, look, we'll park the car there, we'll have something to eat there. There's a nice little forest. No, for once there was no hedge round it, you know, no wiring. So I parked the old van with Gulliver. And he took his dungarees, put his dungarees on his own to do the cooking. We're going to have fried sausage. Because I sat there, I had a youngster, must have been you, mustn't it? Must have been you. I can't think. Because we had, Clifford was a baby, of course. It was only Cliff, that's right, wasn't you then? Anyway, I sat there, the baby, and I'm changing his nappy. This horse comes along, and a very sort of dignified man, obviously an earl or somebody like that, said, oh, good evening. Are you having a nice time? Oh, yes, thank you very much, yes. Oh, I thought, oh, God, that's his property. So he said, you're not supposed to be here, really, he said. But never mind, you carry on and enjoy yourselves. And off he went. I thought, oh God, how humiliating.
You probably thought the peasants were invading.
Peasants.
Oh, rubbish sitting there changing and napping. The other one, his dog got his fucking sausages. I asked you, could you drop any lower?
That seemed like a comedy, didn't it?
Then on further to that, we went back via, oh God, I never remember names, where they used to have, where the monuments are down south, where they've been there for years.
Stonehenge.
Eh?
Stonehenge.
Yes. Stonehenge. And I was near there, and it was getting dark. He said, I've got to park somewhere because the baby needs a bottle of Clifford. Needed the bottle, was screaming his head off. And the bottles and everything were in the boot. And the boot had a good lad because he just bought his car for Grandma because she passed away the next day, didn't she? Part of the family, awkward, see. Anyway, he opened the boot and he was mixing a bottle of milk. And I was sitting in the back seat and nursing the baby. Bang, bang. Flashes everywhere around us. Oh, what's that, Stan? He said, God knows what that is. We're on a big field off the road. Oh, I carry on making the bottle, carry on nursing the baby. All of a sudden, company, halt! A whole regiment standing there next to our car. Oh, God. This man was in charge, and he had a grin on his face. He said, excuse me, sir. He said, we're in the middle of manoeuvres. It's going, artificial bullets, you know, Frank, all around us, and the big tortoise robbers down on his car. He's in the bottle with the back.
God, they like Carry On Camping.
Yeah.
I had some experiences. Oh, Dad must have been dying with shame with the pain. Shut up, kid. He said, carry on with the baby, but please leave just afterwards, won't you? Because it's not safe. We realise that now. Oh, platoon standing there waiting with guns.
Oh
I
dear.
could write a book about that. Oh, and then of course on the way home, but it was still part of the forest. I said to Stan, sitting at the front, of course, that you two were there then. That was the last time we went to the New Forest camping. And I had to go urgently, number 2. Oh, there's nowhere here. There's only the forest here. But I said, I'll have to go. I'll have to go. What to do is my fingers otherwise. I was said, get out of the car. I said, will you park a bit away? I'll get behind a tree. Or I said, behind the tree. Then I thought, I hope nobody comes and can't stop. No petrol, I found a leaf. I hoped it wasn't a nettle. I could write a book by experiences. But people look at me sometimes and they think she's had always a good life. She's in ladylike, but they don't know the half of it. things that have happened to me, oh God, alive. And so many times how this must have escaped me somehow. I mean, for instance, when I was very young, I'd say very young, about 4. And I hadn't lost my mother very long. Of course, Dad had a car for business, a big Minerva. He had the only Belgian car I'd ever been, the Minerva, beautiful. It's like a lounge. It was all padded inside with handles hanging down, you know, beautiful velvet things with fringes and the little glass containers for 1 rose or something each side, like a living room. And big at the back as well, you could sleep in it. And then there were 2 seats there and 2 seats. If I could get 8 people in this car, it was so big. And then it had runners at the side of the doors, you know, that you stepped on them before you got out of the car. It was high. And that was all covered with rubber, black rubber, of course. And on it, Dad had 2 boxes made, if you like, with imitation leather covered. You opened it. One side had this huge box. That was a picnic box for the whole family with all the plugs and things in it. And the other one was for his tools for his car in case it broke down, see. You imagine all this guy must have weighed a ton, wasn't it? And we went to Zeebrugge, to the seaside for the day. And it was fun, we enjoying the time. We were in the water with Dad, my sister and I. Grandma was on the beach as usual, of course, on the deck chair with a coat on. Being a lovely lady she was, really. Anyway, all of a sudden, Gran went up to the car for something, and Dad was trying to show us how to dive through the waves when they came. She was showing. My sister and I were watching. Somebody stood up, looked across the sea, got hold of our arms, one each. She said, I want you to run as quickly as you can with me, right to the car. Don't talk, don't just run as hard as you can. Because I'm about 4 and I was trying, come on, up in the car. Gran and Grandfather sitting there in that big car waiting for us. We got in, lock all the doors, nobody move. Don't move, whatever happens. And we just sat there 2 seconds, and all of a sudden, this terrific force of wind rocking this heavy car left to right, thought it was going over. And that happened, and it all finished in about 4 or 5 minutes. And when it stopped, Dad said, sit there for a while, we're all shaking, you know, don't touch the doors, don't do anything. Case it started again. When we did get out of that car, in that quick, short 2 seconds, a metal bench on the beach, on the prom, that was cemented in the prom, was down. So it showed you the force of that wind. Dad, being an ex-seaman, saw it coming from the distance at sea. So weren't we lucky?
Well, like a tornado. A tornado.
Yes.
Wow.
If we'd stayed in the water 1 2 minutes more, we'd have been sucked out to sea, all 3 of us. Because terrific force, you see, and again, we'd have been up there somewhere. I've had a lot of experiences. I say to people, you say, oh, you're 98. I said, yes, and I've got a lot of life behind me, believe you me. Don't used to say, oh, he was a darling. I have missed him a lot, really. He used to say, Jessica, why don't you write a book? He said, it's fantastic what you've been through. I said, but I haven't got time. Kids, lodgers coming to make money. I said, what can we do? I said, I haven't got time. If you write a book, you've got to have peace and quiet. You've got to come down, have your breakfast, sit down and do that writing and not have any other worries around you. Because you can't write a book unless you've got the whole of you in it, can you? Because you've got to think back and got to think ahead and you've got to think of your word formations and your sentence